Hello everybody, how's it going? Tornado Soup here. Welcome to Where It All Began, where I'll take the first issue of a major series, or the first appearance of a major character, like today's subject, Detective Comics issue number 27, and review it. Take a look at where it all began. Maybe this is more self-explanatory than I thought. Usually it'll only be the original series, none of the reboots or relaunches, and it will always only be the first issue. Issue 2 shall forever remain a mystery. Anyway, everyone good? Sure. Then let's dive into Detective Comics issue number 27. Following the major success that was Superman, the comic industry was sent into a frenzy of creativity and, more prominently, money grubbing. Everyone wanted a piece of the superhero action, and Superman's publisher, National Publications, wanted to try and double dip. Meanwhile, a young New Yorker, fresh out of high school, named Bob Kane, was also eager to get into the seemingly lucrative comics field. He went to make a deal with National, and so the Batman was born. Or at least the name Batman was born. Kane's character was incredibly different, sporting a mostly red spandex costume, strange wing-like attachments on his back, and a domino mask similar to Robin's. Oh, and blonde hair too. He didn't even have a utility belt. But by his first appearance, Bats was in a state much closer to the one that we know and love today. This is mostly due to a man by the name of Bill Finger. Now, this is just supposed to be a review of the comic, not a full-blown history lesson, so I won't get into his whole story. There's an excellent Hulu documentary that does it far better than I ever could anyway, so I recommend you check that out. But I wanted to make a point of noting him, as he's the one that crafted much of what we know from Batman's lore today. From the costumes, to the gadgets, to the car, to the city, to the supporting cast, to the origin. Yet he wasn't credited as co-creator until 2015, so he definitely deserves more of a light put on to his importance in the creation of this character. Now on to the comic itself. This single issue is the starting point for a worldwide phenomenon and one of the most recognizable characters in pop culture. But does it hold up to the legacy that it started? Or has it become horribly dated in the intervening 80 years? Well, there's only one way to find out. The story starts at stately Wayne Manor, where we're introduced to Gotham Police Commissioner James Gordon, who's spending the evening chatting with his friend Bruce Wayne. Gordon's called away to the crime scene after he talks to Bruce a little about the mysterious Batman. It's interesting to note that at this point, we don't know that Bruce Wayne is Batman. It's really played up as a mystery. Looking back, I feel like it seems painfully obvious, but back in 1939, it probably would have played differently. The facts that we know as concrete now kind of get in the way of the mystery. Anyway, Gordon goes to the crime scene, where he's confronted with the evidence. A man called Lambert, who goes by the name The Chemical King, was murdered, and the knife has his son's fingerprints on them. The junior Lambert, however, denies the allegations. It turns out his fingerprints were on the weapon because he pulled it out of his father's back. It seems like something the police would have known before, but whatever. Lil Lambert explains that his father didn't have any enemies, then goes on to tell Gordon of his father's enemies. It's a little weird that he just completely forgot about them, but again, it's a small thing, and really, I'm just nitpicking here. Anyway, Lambert gives the cops the names, one of which is Alfred Stryker, making him the first Alfred in Batman lore. But before they can go, the Lambert estate receives a call from one of the guys, who suspects he's next on the chopping block. Then, as if on cue, the man is shot. So the police rush off to the new murder scene. Bruce Wayne, who has tagged along for some reason, I guess because he was bored, also has all the information. We're still not told that he's Batman, but the Bat does know exactly where to go, which is pretty convenient. However, he's there right after the police hear the murder over the phone, so I'm not really sure how that works. But hey, he's the world's greatest detective, so I actually don't know how much that would help. Let's just chalk it up to the fact that Bill Finger probably wrote this issue over the course of a weekend and didn't have time to check everything. It doesn't really matter. It's not like they knew that this character would go on to be a literal legend. What does matter is that we finally get to see Batman. He confronts the murderers on the roof and gives them a typical bat thrashing. I'm not sure this was intentional, but the opening to Batman the Animated Series actually looks quite a bit like this in terms of framing and even some of the choreography. The connections are kind of loose though, so it's kind of hard to tell, and I might just be going crazy. Anyway, Batman solves the crime, puts the people behind it in jail, yada yada yada. It's all a pretty typical Batman story, really. If you want more of the specifics, I'd suggest you go over to DC Universe to check it out, or go to the regular DC Comics app where you can read it for free. So, how does it hold up? Well, surprisingly well. Unlike with Action Comics number 1, I remember reading this story before, and can actually remember quite vividly, even though it was several years ago. And it's not like there's anything particularly noteworthy about it, other than the fact that it's the first appearance of Batman. The story's really pretty bland, honestly, but it's also fun. It's just a straight up murder mystery. Not a great mystery, but entertaining nonetheless. The dialogue can seem a little awkward at times, but that's really to be expected. Honestly, this book does a better job with trusting the artist than most comics did back then. Now, it's not entirely uncommon to see entirely wordless pages in a comic now, where the story is told visually, but in the early years, the stories were reliant on the words, with the images there pretty much as backup. But here, there's not a ton of narration. And the dialogue, while clunky, is kind of needed to explain what's going on in ways that images just simply can't. I think it seems to be more in line with a modern Batman story than Action Comics number 1 was with a modern Superman story. Sure, there are differences, with a lack of sidekicks and gadgets, among other things, being notable, but a lot has been preserved over the years. The mystery and detective elements, the rich playboy part, Commissioner Gordon, the cowl, the cape, it's all pretty similar. My biggest problem would probably be the art, but that might just be because I'm not a fan of Bob Kane as a person. It's kind of stiff in places, but let's face it, the majority of comics were back then. And the bat suit still looks cool, which is something. Overall, not as groundbreaking in terms of art as it is in terms of character, but I suppose it's passable. All in all, let's give this 8 bowls of soup out of 10. I'm still not sure how I feel about this rating system. It's not as interesting to see the differences between then and now like it is with Action Comics, but it can still be fun, and if you want a Batman mystery, then this might be right up your alley. That's all for now. Have a great day, and goodbye, everybody.